That was fast.
Do you want me to start playing it again?
No, it's okay. I'm just comment. Oh no, I meant the proxy war. The proxy war is over.
Oh, yep. Nelson Peltz, after an interview on CNBC with Bob Iger, just phoned in and said Proxy fight's over. He wishes them well. Happy birthday, Bob. Hope you enjoy the day tomorrow. Let's celebrate
This is
the
all
future
true, by
hand
the
in
way. He
hand.
sounds like you're ad-libbing, but
What was Jim Cramer's quote at the end there?
I don't. Well, he used the Lord's name in vain and said that was good.
So, anyway,
they were so giddy. It was so funny the way. So what happened was, we should probably reset. Bob Iger did an interview with David Faber. Faber's in Burbank. And what's weird is they kind of throw to him beforehand. You could tell he was like, "Why are you doing this? I'm preparing for an interview." So after they finish the interview with Bob, they go back to the studio, and Jim Cramer reveals after a minute or so of just kind of talking about what happened. Nelson Peltz comes on and makes this announcement, and then they just spend the next 5 minutes talking about how they were able to make this happen. And Faber's like, "Well, why didn't you get him a little bit faster while I still had Bob here?" And they're just like, totally inside baseball.
And they keep cutting to Faber with an empty chair.
Yeah, it was like, what was it? Who's the director? Clint Eastwood at the Republican convention however many years ago.
Yeah.
That's a very obscure reference I'm making.
But and anyway, so I mean that's huge news in that we don't have to cover that anymore.
Yeah, now we just have to deal with Florida politics today instead of.
Well, I mean, there's still some fun.
Well, there was. I do want to say before we move on from Peltz, there was one other juicy thing that it's probably out there or has been assumed. I know there's been, because if you look at the timing, it's around Age of Ultron. Bob said when it was asked about like Ike Perlmutter wanting Nelson on the board and asking about his relationship with asking Bob about his relationship with Ike, he said that in 2015 Ike was intent on firing Kevin Feige and Bob stepped in to stop that. So that was kind of
funny. And this is all happening while Ike is still a Disney employee.
Yeah, but I also liked how Iger said, I told him he could step in and continue running Marvel. I didn't say forever. But
it would be interesting to see. I haven't had a chance to see if that was sort of. I think it was consensus, but it's different. I think it's also a story when just Bob Iger says it as opposed to sort of being whispered about. But the more I think about it, it's like, why did Nelson waste all that money doing this proxy thing if he was going to get what he wanted? I mean, we talked before
he
about
wasted
how,
money, but if he, bought a few months ago and sold today, then
oh no, I mean he still made money where it counts in the stock price, but we talked before about how his deck just basically said to do everything Disney, Bob Iger previously, before even this, that he was going to do. So I don't know where the surprise is. I mean, the stock popped with the news, but the news isn't news. We knew that there was going to be layoffs. We knew there was going to be, cost cutting. We knew there was going to be a reorg. Like, I just don't know what they thought was going to happen. Like, he just basically did everything he said he was going to do. And for some reason, people were
Nelson
surprised.
Gets credit for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if it was an ego play anyway, then that's all he wanted, right?
I mean, if that's, I think the cynic in me would say it was becoming more and more clear he wasn't going to win. So, take the win, the perception of a win now by saying, oh, they did it, so I don't have to actually fight, versus, continuing the fight and losing, which is definitionally a loss, where you can't, even if they're doing what you're saying, if you don't win, that means, they don't even like you personally, even they might like your ideas. So, I think it was the right way for him to exit this whole fight. Makes sense and kind of allows him to save face and allows Disney to move forward and take that energy that, they were probably putting into all those PowerPoint decks and all that stuff into something a little bit more productive. Because, we talked about the earnings yesterday, but, the more I thought about it, this is not going to be it's going to be a very interesting time for Disney. You know, under most of Bob Iger's tenure, you know, take COVID out of it, you know, which was sort of after his tenure. But if you take those sort of macroeconomic recessions that they had, 2006, Disney has always been under Iger a company of growth. You know, there was always some exciting thing happening, you know, an acquisition or whatever. And now this is really, you know, a time of cuts, you know, at least not on the park side, but on the media side. You know, we look back to that investor day and all these projects they announced are all excited. Some of those are probably not going to happen. And today, you know, I think it's news is a hard way to put it, but you know, a sort of wishy-washy commitment to Hulu. You know, if he didn't say they're going to sell it, he didn't say they're going to buy it, but not a sort of full-throated endorsement either way. Now, obviously, in the negotiation, you don't want to, you know, go like, oh no, we have to have it, because that's not great.
Especially when you're on the network owned by the company you have to buy it from.
Which wasn't lost on David Faber, but you know, I mean, but then you compare that to the NBA negotiations where he's much more, you know, supportive of it, even as ESPN's going to make cuts. So it'll be interesting to see where Hulu ends up. And, you know, it's not so much Hulu, you know, if Hulu was its own thing, I think it's one thing. But since it's part of the Disney bundle, which is where most Disney Plus subscribers are getting their service at this point, you know, now you got to cleave it if you sell it, and how does that impact Disney Plus? You know, is it do people subscribe to the bundle because you know they it's a good value and you get sort of both ends, or you know, if Disney Plus is on its own, how does that impact sort of bigger number? There's a lot of questions there, and I don't think, you know, I want to be clear. I don't think this necessarily means they won't purchase the part they own, but it'll be, you know, Disney has a long, complicated negotiation history with Comcast, stemming back to the Michael Eisner era, and you know, then continuing on to the 21st Century Fox bidding, Sky, all that stuff, you know, and Disney saddled Comcast with Sky essentially at the end. It's going to be an interesting time. I mean, we still have to see how the reorg plans out. I mean, you know who the head people are, but what does that mean for everyone underneath? What does that mean for the layoffs? When are layoffs going to happen? What's the operational structure moving forward? You know, I mean, we obviously interface with Disney on a daily basis, and it's a question that you know, what we were kind of caught in the who do we report, like who do we work with? We work with Disney Plus, we work with television, like that was always confusing, and it changed, and there was never like an announcement, right? We would just sort of, oh, talk to this person, okay, you know, so how's that going to, I mean, selfishly, how's that going to impact us? But that's just a microcosm of how that impacts everyone, right? How does that impact producers? How does that impact, you know, for your consideration campaigns, all those things that kind of stem out of it. And you know, 7,000 people is a lot of people, and you know, they all do something now maybe they don't need to do something, but it's going to be a very interesting time, particularly on the media business. And then on the parks business, you know, if they're recommitting to sort of growing that business through expansion as opposed to just price increases, you know, they basically say they expect ticket prices to be, you know, slightly ahead of inflation, then, you know, you're paying people slightly ahead of inflation every year, then you're going to need to make up the money with more, you know, people. And if you're capping attendance, they're growing the park. And this is what we've been asking for so long, right? Just build more Disney. You know, if the problem is that if all these things, if the pricing is higher because of demand, if the, you know, reservations are hard to get because of demand, just make more. And if that's what they're going to be doing now, obviously that takes some time, but it'll be interesting to see that, you know, that's going to be the exciting. That's, in a way, I feel like the way we felt about streaming, where it was just sort of project after project after project on the media side, you know, a couple of years ago, I feel like now we're transitioning that over to the park side.
Pretty cool. Sorry, I don't know what else to say about that. I was wondering if there was anything else that stood out about the interview. I'm trying to think back on the whole thing because obviously it got kind of the exciting part came at the very end and even after he was gone. But like a lot of stuff we already knew for the most part. I don't know why people are surprised that he wouldn't talk badly about Bob Chapek and what went wrong. That seems like
Petty.
reasonable. That
Yeah. I mean, I think he walked out. You know, when he pointed out the things he disagreed with without sort of kicking the guy. I mean, there's no reason to badmouth. You know, you replaced him. You did it. You know, he also sort of has to protect that. You know, he thought he was the right guy, obviously. So, you know, I think it's going to be there's really what you know. I guess you know fans may want red meat, but it's not. You know, stay classy.
yeah. Anything else that really jumped out at you there?
I'm just looking.
Well, he did kind of talk about Disney Plus, and how he mentioned like leaning into their franchises, which kind of, I don't know if concerned me is the right term, but we talked about how Disney used to make singles and doubles in the theaters, and then those became all tent poles. So then Disney Plus became a home for them, and now it feels like that's not going to be Disney Plus isn't going to be a home for them either. Like I think of like a Mysterious Benedict Society, which just got canceled after 2 seasons. Like those are the types of shows I don't think, if they're not branded, well, they're probably not going to. I mean, that was branded to Disney technically, but
yeah, well, I think that's something they kind of saw with Disney Plus. I mean, now granted, Disney Plus sort of got bigger content because it was the only place to put it, for a bit. But if you look at what's trending on Disney Plus, which is
Bluey.
It's Bluey. It's Disney Junior. It's which you've seen an expansion with. Recently, there seems like there's a new Disney Junior show every month. Kif coming out next month. We've had Super Kitties, so on and so forth. And then, the movies, the classic films. Whether it's Moana or what have you. I mean, I guess if we consider Moana a classic, but not necessarily brand new. Encanto, Disney film, Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, Avatar films that are now on the service that aren't necessarily released there. So I wonder if Disney, they're still going to make stuff for Disney Plus. There's that pipeline is not going to go away. $3 billion is not an insignificant amount to decrease, but it's not a zero amount. And you look at what gets traction, and there's been a lot of shows that just never got traction. And I'm thinking even more on the Hulu side, like shows that just sort of come and go. Now, The Bear obviously does well. There's been shows that have Dave from FX. But then I look at there's shows that come up on Hulu that just seem to disappear, right? And even when, even if they're good or bad, it's not really relevant. But they just sort of never reach the zeitgeist. Whereas Mandalorian's going to reach the zeitgeist to a certain level. Now it's more expensive to make, but maybe you can address that. Especially if you bring it back to theatrical business, there's something to be said of maybe branded singles and doubles, right? Maybe the Marvel shows don't have to have such an epic scope. You keep that for the movies, but you kind of give the in-between stuff. You don't want to make it cheap, but just
I mean, they could have done WandaVision without the big CGI finale. So.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for that. And limitations can inspire creativity. And doing something different.
I mean, I think I think She-Hulk, if they do a second season and just keep it on the actual law part of the show, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it'd be fun to have She-Hulk specials commenting on the state of the Marvel universe.
Well, yeah, not even that. Just saying that could putting superheroes into a. I mean, I guess they've really done it twice now because you've done WandaVision, which covers a whole lot of sitcom tropes, and then the She-Hulk being a lawyer show. I think That
Or
would
actually
work
just
if you
develop a
just do
Kevin
it
AI.
without. You don't have to even wink.
Yeah, just do your, just have it made by AI. I think that would work. But let's see here. What's this? The only game brings up the Wakanda Forever China box office. Take what you get. I think Avatar is the headline there. So, China being an interesting market. I mean, who knows if the tensions seem to be escalating by the day. So you don't really want to rely, a lot of companies are using China as sort of the way to prop up their company by growing there. But I think that that's done. And go, it's time to kind of have to make money at home, which is what they're trying to do with Disney Plus. They're threading a needle. It's going to be hard, but it seems like Bob Iger may be a little bit more, I guess, suited for the job, for the nuance that is required. It's, one of the things I found frustrating was it felt like Disney at the time was always listening to what Wall Street wanted, which was put everything on streaming, right? Well, then they changed their mind what they want, and it's like, well, COVID did play into that, but you have to stand up to these guys and say, like, hey, you know what? Releasing Avatar to theaters made us $2 billion, so therefore, we should keep doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. But resetting to the top, in case you weren't here for us, that they did after this interview with Bob Iger on CNBC, Jim Cramer got Nelson Peltz on the phone, and Nelson declared that the Proxy fight is over. He wishes Disney well, and he made a lot of money from this anyway. He didn't state how much, but he said he'll buy Jim Cramer lunch. So
I think well. So there's 2 points. One is he says who's counting. I'm sure he's counting. And number 2, maybe he made enough that he can pay for like Zoom.
I hope so. Well, that's why he was on a cell phone this time.
Yeah. Hey, it's there's activist investor thing. Now it's like, okay, Disney's done. Let's look at Salesforce. And it's just glad to have that monkey off your back because, it just takes time. I mean, look at all those PowerPoints Disney released, all those filings. That's time that somebody has to review those that they're not spending on, running the company. And this is a very important time for the company as they try and pivot Disney to become profitable on streaming. Yeah. And it hasn't been addressed as much, but ESPN, has to basically completely change its business model at a time that to be determined time, right? And while you're doing while the rights fees are escalating, it's complicated. And Gio's noting that the Iger interview is on CNBC YouTube, so you can definitely watch it at your leisure. I would recommend it once you're done watching us, but it's just, I'm curious to see how they move forward from here on a messaging standpoint. We've been waiting for. We got the numbers now. We know how much the content spend is going to be, and we know how much the parks spend is going to be. $6 billion, basically at the parks, and I guess $27 billion over on content. But what is it, right? He says curated general entertainment. Well, what's that mean? I mean, we've seen, we go back to the Disney Plus launch where there was just a lot of garbage, right? That no one seemed to watch. And I think it was created to be fast. I mean, there was things that were announced that I don't think ever aired, or there's stuff that they kind of burned off, like Family Reboot. That was announced as a sort of a early title and finally just showed up a little bit ago. And I mean, I don't think they even sent a screener out. Like, they just let it burn. And so, and I think part of that is understandable. You kind of want to see what works. I mean, I don't think they foresaw the Bluey phenomenon. And so what's it look like? He also says they're going to change the marketing. So does that mean more on the service or less on the service and more on the content? What's that mean? And it's just an interesting time to see. And this is the end of one phase of this. Bob Iger has announced the structure, but then you got to get to the perform phase, right? Like you can't just announce the structure and then that's it. You got to see how that structure plan works out, and things. I look back to when Bob Iger became CEO the first time, and things moved very quickly. Whereas this time, things are moving a lot slower, and there's probably reasons for that. Not one of which is probably Nelson Peltz, but what is going to be made for Disney Plus? If you're looking at costs, are you cutting? Are we not going to get Andor season? Well, I guess they're already making it, but like Willow season 2, or we talked about Mysterious Benedict Society getting canceled. What about Mighty Ducks Game Changers? What about National Treasure, Edge of History? Those, there's not been a lot of renewal discussions as I think they kind of waited for this conversation to play out. And I'm curious to see what ends up happening. What is the content play? And are we going to get something? When are we going to get the essentially the upfront of Disney Plus? I mean, maybe that's when it is, the upfront, or maybe it's at National Streaming Day or something, where we just kind of know what I expect. I mean, Disney Plus is kind of a downer right now. Like, there's not a lot of there's a lot of Lifetime content that's coming, a lot of A&E content, but there's not outside of Mandalorian. I don't think we know of any sort of major content release dates at this point.
Yeah, not specific dates, but we know some other stuff in the works.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm less concerned about like the American-born Chinese or stuff that's coming that's sort of done that they're just kind of waiting. I mean, we still don't have a Muppet Mayhem release date, although we know it's done filming. But I'm more concerned is not the right word. What are they greenlighting? What's coming? What is going to be renewed? Because that's going to tell you what we're looking forward to in the future, as opposed to a lot of this stuff was still pretty early on, just got delayed. And there's a writer's strike looming that could also impact all this. So you would think they'd want to be stockpiling, which is maybe what they're doing by sort of holding on to some of these titles longer than originally expected. But I'm sure it wasn't brought up on the earnings call. It wasn't brought up during David Faber's interview, but the writer's strike. I mean, I just remember the last one, and not that it's a foregone conclusion, but if one does happen, so many shows just die because by the time they get back up and running, the sort of moment's gone, and it's sad. Gio says they should buy. I don't think that's a way to decrease your content spend, but yeah, it's they are the McDonald's of television production. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all, because it's comfort food, and that's great. Just seeing a lot of tweets about Nelson Peltz. But in any case, just if we want to look forward to what we expect to day 2, we expect the Florida House to pass the Reedy Creek bill, go to the Senate, then the governor, which would basically change Reedy Creek to the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, and have the appointees, have the directors be appointed by the governor. Doesn't mean it's the end of the story. There could be a legal fight and all that other stuff, but we do expect that to happen later today. The session will start at 2 p.m. Eastern. There's obviously other bills that need to be considered as well. Not quite sure when Disney would be addressed, but that is on the plate for today. Anything else you want to bring up?
Well, I did just see that Burt Bacharach passed away, and yesterday was DCA's birthday. And you may remember that when he walked into DCA, one of the songs you got to hear on the Sunshine Plaza loop was "Do You Know the Way to San Jose," which he wrote.
Oh, I didn't know he did that one.
According to Deadline, he did.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm like, yep, that sounds like a Burt Bacharach song.
Yeah, it does. But I just always like, I used to work at DCA in the entrance, and I used to always just be like, can we just tell them we just take the 5 up to 580 and then 880? But
I was born and raised in San Jose.
La, 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 la. Did he do What the World Needs Now Is Love?
I think so.
Because I feel like with Nelson Peltz, that's like a very appropriate song. Because we all are kumbayaing, no more proxy fight, no more blue and white and green and purple proxy forms. We're all going to be together. So I think we can wrap up. You guys will be back a little bit later, right? To discuss.
Yeah, about an hour and a half, assuming that we don't have any tech issues today.
And then I'm guessing we'll also be back later this afternoon to if the Reedy Creek bill, if we have an update on that, and sort of any fallout from this news today. That the proxy fight's over. Bob Iger's restructured the company. I think we really want to see how this impacts the employees of the company, on the studio side. But we shall see. So thanks everyone for joining us. As always, we will break in whenever news breaks, and we will talk to you guys later.
Bye.